Every heart on this earth, whether it admits it or not, is searching for home, not the kind made of wood and brick, but the one that feels like peace, the one that silence can't steal and time can't touch. We chase after success, pleasure, comfort, and recognition, but even when we hold them, something inside still whispers, "This can't be all there is." That whisper is the echo of eternity calling you back to where you belong. Heaven is not a fantasy, it's the promise that gives meaning to every breath we take on this fragile earth. It is the anchor that holds us when the storms of life rage too strong, when tears blur our vision, and when loss leaves us gasping for answers. Without heaven, every grave would be a period. But because of heaven, every grave becomes a comma, just a pause before the glory begins. Every human being, no matter their background, wealth, or belief, carries within them a quiet ache, a longing for something more than this world can offer. It's the unspoken desire that surfaces in our most silent moments when the noise fades and the heart begins to speak. We chase after joy, love, and success, hoping they will fill that invisible emptiness, but they never do completely. Because what we are truly longing for isn't found here. It's a glimpse of something eternal, something our souls remember even if our minds have forgotten. This longing is not weakness. It's evidence of our divine design. It's the fingerprint of God on the human heart, gently reminding us that we were never meant to find our final home on earth. From the very beginning, humanity has looked beyond the horizon. Ancient civilizations spoke of paradise. Poets wrote about eternity, and dreamers lifted their eyes toward the heavens, sensing there must be more. Even the most skeptical minds feel that pull when they stand beneath a starlit sky or witness the birth of a child. There is something within us that whispers, "There's more beyond what you can see." That whisper is the soul yearning for its creator, for the place where broken things are made whole, where time no longer steals what we love, and where peace isn't momentary, it's endless. The truth is, no matter how advanced our world becomes, no amount of technology or achievement can quiet that longing. You can fill your life with possessions, people, and power, yet still feel a deep emptiness when the lights go out. That emptiness isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. It's the call of heaven echoing in the human heart, reminding us that life's purpose extends beyond what our eyes can see. The hunger for eternity is not about escape, it's about belonging. It's about remembering that the deepest parts of who we are were created to exist forever, not merely to survive a temporary world. When people ignore that longing, they often try to numb it with distractions, addictions, or the pursuit of perfection. But those paths always lead back to the same place, a quiet, restless soul still searching for meaning. That restlessness is sacred. It pushes us to seek truth, to look upward when the world grows heavy, and to find hope beyond the limitations of life. The longing for heaven, for something beyond this temporary existence, is not a distant dream, it's the most real thing about us. It proves that eternity isn't a myth, it's the home we've been homesick for since the beginning. Every pursuit in this world, no matter how grand or fulfilling it may seem, eventually reaches a point where it can no longer satisfy the soul. People pour their lives into chasing wealth, power, beauty, and success, believing that once they attain these things, they'll finally feel complete. Yet, when they arrive, they often find an emptiness waiting for them, a silence that no applause can drown out. The truth is, the world offers temporary pleasures that fade with time, but it cannot give the eternal peace that the heart craves. Without a vision of heaven, without the hope of something greater beyond this life, every achievement becomes hollow, every joy fragile, and every loss unbearable. We see this emptiness all around us. The man who builds empires still feels a void he can't explain. The celebrity adored by millions still battles loneliness in quiet hotel rooms. The student who dreams of success realizes that even when the dream comes true, something inside still aches for more. That ache is the soul reminding us that the things of earth were never designed to fulfill eternal desires. We can taste happiness here, but it's only a shadow of the joy that heaven holds. The pleasures of the world are like the morning dew. They shimmer for a moment, then vanish under the weight of the day. When a person lives only for this world, their sense of purpose becomes fragile, easily shaken by failure, disappointment, or loss. But when they live with eternity in mind, everything changes. Work is no longer just about wealth, it becomes an act of worship. Pain is no longer meaningless, it becomes preparation for glory. Every small act of kindness, every moment of faith begins to echo beyond time. Without heaven, life feels like a story that ends too soon, a book closed before the last chapter. But with heaven, every sorrow and every sacrifice gains significance. The emptiness of the world is not a punishment, it's a revelation. It's how God teaches us that we were made for more. When our hearts grow tired of chasing temporary things, that's when we start to see clearly. That's when heaven becomes not just a distant idea, but the answer we've been searching for all along. Without heaven, the world becomes a cycle of endless striving and quiet despair. But when the reality of heaven enters the heart, even the smallest moment becomes filled with meaning because we finally understand this world was never meant to be enough. Heaven is not just a destination, it is the fulfillment of every promise God has ever made to his people. Throughout time, humanity has clung to divine promises of peace after pain, light after darkness, and life after death. These promises have carried generations through the storms of history, through war, loss, and uncertainty. and all of them point toward one unshakable truth that one day everything broken will be made whole. Heaven is the place where those promises reach their completion, where faith turns into sight and hope finally rests. It is the divine assurance that no prayer goes unheard, no tear unseen, and no act of love forgotten. From the very beginning, God's word has painted a vision of restoration. The promise of heaven is woven into the story of creation, redemption, and eternal life. When humanity fell, God promised a way back. When hearts grew weary, He promised rest. When death entered the world, He promised resurrection. Heaven is the ultimate expression of those promises, a realm untouched by decay or sin, where the Creator Himself dwells among His creation. It is the completion of every covenant, the realization of every prophecy, and the evidence that God keeps His word. Every promise we hold on to in this life finds its fulfillment there. The promise of peace in a world of chaos becomes reality in heaven, where nothing threatens or corrupts. The promise of joy that endures beyond sorrow finds its truest form there, where pain is erased and laughter never ends. Even the promise of love, perfect, unconditional, and eternal, exists fully only in the presence of the one who is love itself. Heaven isn't merely a reward for the faithful, it's the place where every thread of God's story comes together in radiant perfection. When we understand heaven as the fulfillment of God's promises, it changes the way we live. It reminds us that faith is not foolishness but foresight, that every trial endured is leading us somewhere eternal. The struggles of today are not wasted, they are part of a larger tapestry that heaven will one day reveal in full beauty. Every promise God has made, to comfort, to restore, to redeem, finds its yes in heaven. It is the assurance that everything He has spoken will come to pass, that every seed of faith planted in this life will one day bloom in the soil of eternity. Life on earth is a constant balance between joy and pain, between moments that lift us and moments that break us. We celebrate births, achievements, and love, yet we also endure sickness, loss, and disappointment. Everything here seems temporary, like sunlight that fades before evening comes. But heaven stands in perfect contrast to this fragile world. It is the place where joy never ends, where time cannot erode what God has built, and where every shadow is replaced by light. The pain we experience in this life is real, but it is not permanent. The joy that awaits beyond it is not fleeting, it is eternal. This contrast between temporary suffering and everlasting peace gives meaning to every trial we face. The struggles of life can often feel unbearable because we see only what is right before us. Grief feels final, heartbreak feels endless, and injustice feels unfixable. Yet heaven reminds us that our perspective is limited. It lifts our eyes beyond the present, showing us that what feels permanent now is only passing through. The tears that fall in the night will one day be wiped away by hands that bear the marks of redemption. The weight that feels unbearable today will one day be exchanged for glory beyond comparison. Heaven does not erase the reality of pain. It redeems it. It transforms suffering into strength and loss into renewal. When we live with the awareness of heaven, the storms of this world begin to lose their power. We understand that every difficulty is shaping us, preparing us for something far greater than we can imagine. The pain of this life is not wasted. It is producing endurance, compassion, and faith that reaches beyond the visible. The joy of heaven is not simply the absence of pain, it is the fullness of peace that pain can no longer touch. This understanding changes how we walk through our darkest valleys. We begin to carry hope not as wishful thinking, but as certainty that what we endure is not the end of the story. The contrast between temporary pain and eternal joy reveals the mercy and wisdom of God. He allows us to taste suffering so we might long for something purer, something perfect. He lets us experience the limits of this life so we will reach for the life that never ends. When we finally step beyond this world, every unanswered question, every ache, and every tear will find its reason. Heaven is the assurance that the joy coming will be so complete it will make every moment of pain worth it. Belief in heaven gives meaning to the pain, sacrifice, and struggle we face in this life. Without that eternal hope, suffering feels random and unbearable, and our sacrifices seem like wasted efforts. But when we believe that there is more beyond this life, that every hardship holds purpose in a greater plan, we begin to see pain differently. It stops being just something to endure and becomes something that refines us, shapes us, and draws us closer to the heart of God. Heaven gives perspective to the trials that might otherwise crush us, reminding us that the road of suffering is often the path that leads to glory. When a person knows that heaven is real, every difficulty becomes infused with divine meaning. The losses we endure are no longer just tragedies. They become part of a journey toward eternal restoration. The sacrifices we make in love, integrity, and faithfulness are not forgotten. They echo in eternity. Every tear shed in silence, every burden carried quietly, every moment of endurance in the face of injustice, all of it is seen and valued by the one who promises to make all things new. This is what transforms suffering from despair into purpose. We are not simply victims of circumstance, we are travelers moving through a temporary storm toward everlasting peace. Belief in heaven also gives courage to face pain with dignity. When we understand that this life is not the end, we gain strength to keep walking even when the way is steep. The Apostle Paul called our struggles light and momentary, not because they were easy, but because he compared them to the eternal glory that awaited beyond them. Heaven redefines what matters most. It tells us that suffering endured for righteousness, love, and faith will never be forgotten. What seems unbearable today will one day be a crown of victory in the life to come. In a world that often worships comfort and avoids pain at all costs, heaven teaches us a higher truth that suffering can be sacred. It can become the place where faith grows, where pride dies, and where the soul learns what truly lasts. Every moment of patience, forgiveness, and perseverance becomes an offering that heaven records. The belief in heaven turns even the darkest pain into a bridge towards something eternal. It assures us that no act of love is wasted, no sacrifice unseen, and no tear shed in vain. Heaven gives our pain purpose, transforming what hurts today into the glory that will shine forever. From the beginning of time, humanity has carried the memory of something perfect, a place of peace, beauty, and unbroken communion with God. That place was Eden, where creation and Creator existed in harmony, where there was no death, no pain, and no separation. But when sin entered the world, that perfection was lost. The door to Eden closed and humanity began to wander, longing for what once was. Heaven is the promise that what was lost will be restored, not just partially, but fully, gloriously, and eternally. It is the divine restoration of everything humanity forfeited in the garden. In Eden, mankind walked with God, and that closeness defined existence. There was no fear, no guilt, no barrier between the divine and the human. But sin fractured that connection, and ever since, the human heart has been searching for the way back. Every ache, every longing for meaning, every cry for peace is a reflection of that loss. Heaven is not merely a new beginning, it is the recovery of that original intimacy, a return to perfect fellowship with God. The story that began in a garden will end in a city of light, where the Creator once again dwells among His creation, and where love is no longer shadowed by loss. When Scripture speaks of heaven, it describes not just a place of beauty, but of restoration. The curse that entered the world will be broken. The earth itself, marred by corruption and decay, will be renewed. The pain that sin introduced, disease, injustice, and death, will be erased. Heaven is the fulfillment of God's plan to restore everything that has been damaged by sin's reach. The world as we know it groans for that redemption, and every soul that yearns for peace is echoing that divine longing for renewal. This restoration is more than a return to innocence, it is the perfection of what God always intended for humanity. In heaven, we will not just regain what was lost, we will experience it in a way even greater than before. The relationship between God and His people will be unbreakable, our joy untouchable, and our peace unending. Heaven restores not only creation but also identity. It is the moment when every broken heart, every shattered dream, and every wounded soul will find its completion in the presence of the one who makes all things new. The paradise lost in Eden will be the paradise regained, eternal and perfect, where nothing good is ever lost again. The thought of death has always cast a shadow over human life. No matter how strong, successful, or wise a person becomes, the reality of mortality stands as an unmovable truth. We fear it because it feels like an ending, a separation from everything and everyone we love. But belief in heaven changes that perspective completely. It transforms death from a wall into a doorway, from a final loss into a glorious beginning. The peace that comes from knowing death is not the end is one of the greatest gifts faith can offer. Heaven assures us that the story does not close with our final breath, but continues in a realm where life is eternal, love never fades, and joy never ends. When we understand that heaven is real, the fear of death begins to lose its grip. We no longer see it as destruction, but as transition, the moment when we step out of the temporary into the eternal. The human body may decay, but the soul lives on, untouched by time or decay. This truth gives comfort to those who grieve and courage to those who suffer. It reminds us that every goodbye spoken on earth is only temporary, that reunion awaits in the place where time no longer divides. The peace that comes from this hope is not wishful thinking, it is rooted in the unchanging promise of God who conquered death and opened the way to life everlasting. Belief in heaven reframes the way we experience loss. It allows us to mourn without despair, to remember without hopelessness. When a loved one passes, their story is not over, it simply continues in another chapter, one we cannot yet see but are promised to one day join. This knowledge softens the sharp edges of grief and fills the silence left behind with hope. It does not erase sorrow, but it gives it purpose. Every moment of pain becomes a reminder that love endures beyond the grave, and that eternity is not a myth but a home waiting for us. For the believer, death becomes not an enemy but a messenger leading us into fulfillment. The peace that heaven brings allows us to live boldly, love deeply, and let go freely, knowing that nothing truly good is ever lost. When we rest in the assurance of heaven, the fear of the unknown disappears, replaced by a quiet confidence that what lies ahead is not darkness but light. Heaven gives us peace not only in dying, but in living, because we know that life never truly ends, it simply changes form in the hands of eternity. The belief in heaven gives life direction, purpose, and urgency. When a person truly understands that this world is not the final destination, their priorities begin to change. Heaven becomes not just a future hope, but a present motivation, shaping how we think, act, and love. It reminds us that every decision, every word, and every act of kindness carries eternal weight. The awareness of heaven transforms ordinary life into something sacred, because we begin to live with eternity in view. We realize that our time here is not about collecting possessions or titles, it's about shaping a soul that will last forever. Heaven inspires us to live righteously, not out of fear of punishment, but out of love for what is to come. When we believe that our actions echo into eternity, integrity begins to matter more than reputation, and compassion outweighs comfort. We start forgiving more easily, loving more freely, and serving more willingly because we know that the things we do in this life are seeds planted in the soil of forever. The person who lives with heaven in their heart carries a quiet strength, a peace that the world cannot take away, and a purpose that no hardship can erase. This heavenly perspective also teaches us to value people over possessions and faithfulness over fame. It challenges the illusion that success on earth defines our worth, reminding us that true success is measured by how much of God's love we reflect. When heaven becomes real to us, our hearts loosen their grip on the temporary. We stop chasing things that fade and begin investing in what lasts: truth, love, grace, and mercy. Every act of goodness becomes a reflection of the eternal world we're moving toward. Heaven gives us the courage to stand firm in our convictions, even when the world mocks or misunderstands, because we are not living for the applause of men, but for the welcome of the Father who waits beyond this life. The awareness of heaven infuses every day with meaning. It keeps us grounded when life feels uncertain and lifts us higher when the world tries to pull us down. Knowing that heaven awaits gives strength to endure temptation, wisdom to make choices that honor God, and humility to live with gratitude instead of pride. It is the promise that every sacrifice, every act of love, and every moment of faith will one day be rewarded beyond measure. Heaven does not just tell us where we are going, it reminds us how we should live while we are still here.